Welcome to a podcast of total terror. Night of the Nerdy Laser. A podcast which celebrates films of horror. Night of the Nerdy Laser. A night with a podcast that won't stay dead. A podcast of total horror. Night of the Nerdy Laser.
Welcome everybody to Night of the Nerdy Laser. This is a very special episode because it is part of our interview series. I am Richard Yule.
I'm Matt Henry.
And I'm Jeff Lown.
And we are very excited because tonight we have a very special guest. You may know him from the classic Last House on the Left, Wes Craven's first movie. He played the role of Junior. I would like to welcome in Mr. Marc Sheffler.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for having me. Richard, Jeff, and Matt.
Mind being blown.
Yes.
Right out of the back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really, Last House on the Left is a crazy movie for me just because of, you know, the time it came out, what it represents, and like all the different ways Wes directed that movie. So I'm sure that's the movie that you're most known for, right?
Yeah, it's the only one that has gotten the notoriety and has been around for half a century. So
yeah, it's crazy. It's been around for what, 40 years?
50.
50 years, man.
Yeah. We just this year is the 50th anniversary, and to give you a kind of historical perspective. When I saw the film the first time all put together, I used to go to the office and watch Wes and edit, but when I saw what's called an answer print, which is the final thing, at a cast and crew screening at a Filmways post-production house in New York City, we watched it, and I was standing outside of it with David Hess and Fred Lincoln. And we all looked at each other after having seen it and said, it's great that we all met and we love working together and maybe we'll get a chance to do it again, but no one's ever going to come and see this piece of shit. We all knew that. We all sensed that. We laughed about it and said, what a great time we had. It was a fucking great time making it. One of the best times in my life. But no one's going to ever see it, right? So, give you why the film was made. It was financed by a company called Hallmark Releasing, a company that owned a chain of drive-in theaters in the Northeast, Massachusetts, in the New England area. I forget how many they had, but they had some kind of formula done where if they made a movie for a certain amount of money and showed it in their theaters over 2 or 3 summers, they started to turn a profit, right? Because they had a built-in audience wherever they were. They were like the only drive-ins that had built-in. They knew they could count on their audience. Movie gets made for like $93,000. Sean does, renders 30 prints, delivers it to Hallmark, gets released. A couple of months, it's doing exactly what Hallmark, wanted it to do. Hallmark talked to David Hess and I about writing another movie, which they gave us some money to do. And all of a sudden, Roger Ebert gets a hold of a print, screens it, writes a 3.5 out of 4-star review. Okay.
Wow.
Right. And when I use the word literally right now in this next sentence, I actually mean literally. Literally overnight, everything changed. Out of the drive-ins, and I walked into Sean Cunningham's office after the day the review that came out, and he was running around screaming on the telephone, trying to fill orders that amounted to well over 1,000 prints. So yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, that happened, and the film became what it was. Last August, I was in Colombia, where my wife and I live 3 months a year, visiting her family. And I got an email with a link that a friend of mine had sent me. I clicked on the link, and it took me to the Museum of Modern Art in New York City and to an exhibition of films, 6 films, under the theory of films that have a visceral effect on the human body. And among the 6 was The Last House on the Left. And I fucking went nuts. I said, I can't believe this. I just can't believe this.
I mean, it's a rite of passage film, right? As growing up, that's what it was like. That Texas Chainsaw, these movies are like, let's watch them with our friends. Can you sit through it? You know?
Yeah, I Spit on Your Grave.
And I'll be honest with you, I've had different, through the years, I've had different interpretations of the film, personal interpretations of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, mostly they aligned with where I was in my life. When I made the movie and I saw it, I told you what my reaction was, because, I was 21 years old, and it just looked like, a piece of shit movie. I knew a good movie from a bad movie, but it just looked like a piece of shit movie, right? That's okay. We had fun. It had its plus side. It was a movie. I had a credit. And then when this happened, when Roger wrote that review, and shit changed, it just, wow. I don't know the actual number. Jeremy Raines says 4 weeks. I kind of remember 2 weeks. But what I'm getting at is it was in the top 10 in the United States for maybe between 2 and 4 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in my life history, for between 2 and 4 weeks, I was one of the 4 stars of a top 10 movie in the United States. And that just makes me smile because, I'm pretty much just a goofball.
It's definitely my favorite Hallmark movie, no doubt. Right next to I'm Coming Home for Christmas and Shovel Pumpkin Up.
When you said Hallmark, I was like, oh, my wife's watching one of their Christmas movies.
Not the same Hallmark. No, this is not.
Yeah, it's different thing. Different thing.
So
yeah, go ahead, Matt.
No. I was just gonna say one of the things I remember whenever I was younger and I bought the special edition whenever it first came out was how long had it been in drive-ins under different titles, because they kind of tossed around like Cruel Company, Sex Crimes of the Century.
Yeah. Not real long. I think that the film was released in August. 50 years ago, 72. So I think they did some tests at drive-ins with different titles, but once they locked on to that, it's only a movie, it's only a movie, it's only a movie. And Last House was the first film, I think, to do TV commercials.
Oh wow.
I don't think films did TV. I sort of remember hearing something about that they were the first to do that. And have you ever seen any of those old TV commercials that
on the DVD they have some TV spots?
They fucking nailed it. They created, they did what to horror movies what Brian Epstein did for the Beatles. They just created the need. They created the excitement. And the only title that worked with that campaign had to be so vague and innocuous that they could paint it as ominously as they wanted it to be, because it really means nothing. It's just fucking word soup,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they never really say it in the movie or anything, and the house is on a road, so you imagine it's probably not the last house because it goes both ways.
But to Wes's credit, he always had the Virgin Spring metaphor looming very, very close to what we were doing, and the kind of weird gothic Last House on the Left title sort of adds to it, right? It just added to it.
Sounds like a Vincent Price movie almost.
Yeah,
you know?
something. Yeah, it had some
Yeah.
ominous to it, man. It just, the Last House on the Right wouldn't have.
Doesn't have the same ring to it.
Come get some ice cream. They'll give you ice cream. They'll give you candy, then you'll leave.
Yeah.
The movie, I think it's so visceral, like you said, with the being one of the 6 films, because I mean it's kind of off-putting, right? Like there's this odd music that's almost like a hokey comedy music, and then you have a serious subject of the girls being attacked, and then the parents losing a girl, and the parents fighting back, and just all these things. But in watching it recently, I recognize that it's not so it's not as I remember seeing more than what is actually shown in the movie. So it's one of those things where your mind creates this false thing of you think it's gorier or kind of worse than it actually was. Do you find that?
That's to Wes's credit.
Yeah.
Wes did that.
It's effective.
Yeah, it's still effective. I mean, I go to screenings every now and then. People invite me. They're screening at theaters around the country, and sometimes I do horror conventions also every now and then, and they screen it, and it still has legs. It's still people. I always wondered about the kind of durability of its cross generationality, the aspect of it, because it's not the same people who watch it, right? So obviously it gets handed off. Somebody says to somebody, "Hey, you got to see this," or "Have you seen Last House on the Left?" So through horror film conventions, I came to understand that a lot of parents make their children watch it because they want them to know what happens if they make a wrong decision.
Yeah.
Don't go out. Don't stay out of the city.
Yep. I have heard that well over a couple of hundred times, that girls would come up and say, "My dad made me watch this," or fathers with daughters would show up at my table and say, "Here, I made her watch this, so she could stay away from guys like you." And I said, "Absolutely. Okay."
Well, it's a hard tone to strike. The movie there's not a lot of movies that can strike the tone where our villains are kind of goofy and likable in a sense until they do something really horrible. But also there's these moments of kind of goofy and fun and whimsical that's throughout the movie. There's only 2 movies that I can think of aside from Last House on the Left that achieved that. And one of them actually took music from Last House on the Left, and that would be Cabin Fever.
Cabin Fever,
yeah. And then maybe Devil's Rejects too, where you're able to take the concept of the bad guys, and your character is really the only one of the group that gives the group levity or sympathy. So the only reason you kind of stick around with the group to see if anything good will happen is to see if anything good will happen to you. So your character is very important to it.
As I got older, like I told you earlier, I watched it every now and then, and I each time I looked at it through different eyes, right? I'd long ago abandoned the fact that I was there when it was made. That doesn't get me really anything. And about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I watched it, and then I figured out to me what the movie was about. And if all you guys have seen it, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So to me, the movie is defined by the dinner scene. And if you notice what happened in the dinner scene, interspersed with the dialogue were shots of the physical difference between Krug and his family and Dr. Collingwood and his house and his wife, and shots of ill-fitting clothes and worn and tattered things. So I watched that scene, and then I reran it and watched it again, and it suddenly occurred to me that what this really was a skirmish in class warfare. Mm-hmm. And that's what the movie was about, and that's where Krug's poison was coming from, his jealousy of people who had, and the Collingwoods who ultimately survived are because the rich always win. And it was really, it was really class warfare. It was a serious skirmish in an overall battle that goes on between, classes. And this was it in its most violent extreme, because that, to me, what it was, Dr. Collingwood prevailed. He never in a million years should have prevailed.
Yeah,
in a million years. But the way they set it up, Krug was not 100% there, and that became, his arrogance became his downfall. And Dr. Collingwood had more tricks up his sleeve, and he had more tricks because he had more money. The rich always win.
I noticed that in that scene too. This last time I watched it,
Matt's thinking. I'm sorry.
Did you see smoke coming out of his ears? That happens from time to time.
I mean, there may be smoke coming out of my ears from earlier on, but that's a different kind. I'm not thinking, sir. I'm confused. No, I'm joking.
But
come on, work with me.
But I noticed that on the dinner scene as well, as like Krug is so hungry, he's asking for more spaghetti, and I think you bring up a great point, and I did kind of notice that this last time I watched it, which I hadn't before. And I think it becomes, when you have Miss Collinsworth do what she did as far as biting a certain body part off, basically, I think it shows that, both sides can stoop to their level. The other side can stoop to that level if they have to.
Wait a second. Was it stooping to a level, or was it doing what they had to do to survive?
I mean, that's probably more the case. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
don't think I think she was a warrior there, actually, because she had to do something, pardon the pun, but extremely distasteful. And she did it. And like I said, she survived. She rose, she rose to a ferocity that even momentarily outdid theirs.
Yeah.
I do have another question, but I want to toss it to Jeff. Jeff looked like he was.
No, no, you're good. Go for it. Go ahead. It's really, really interesting. So
yeah.
Looking at it through this lens. So one of the things that I hear about this movie whenever I watch it with certain people is sometimes people get a little thrown off by like the musical choices and the kazoos and stuff like that, and these moments like with the police officers and how it's a little kind of whimsical,
throwing down their hat.
I'm like, yeah, but did you not see? There's also these sequences that look like documentary shots that are like whenever the two girls are playing at the waterfall, and there's this beautiful, just amazing music in the background, and we're just taking a second and we're taking in the beauty, and it feels like a documentary. There's parts of this movie that feel like you're watching it from like you're there, you're in it, and you're watching.
Again, the genius of young Wes Craven, right? Wes had no experience as a film director. However, he was an innate storyteller, right? And he knew the story he wanted to tell backwards and forwards, and he knew the tone and the manner he wanted to tell it. The reason that the cops were the way they were is if you took them out, right, you never give the audience a chance to breathe.
Yeah.
And it becomes unbearable. Okay. It becomes unwatchable because there is no. So if you think of it as a roller coaster and the roller coaster chugs up to the top of the lift hill and then goes way down, well, going way down is like the thrills that are attached to watching these horrible crimes being committed. And when they're committed, you know, the you're at the bottom right? And then you can't keep going down. You got to go up in order to go down again. So there's some relief, and it gives the audience a chance to breathe, and it gives a little frivolity to it. First of all, life is silly, man. Like it's weird and it's goofy and shit happens, right? So I don't argue with success.
I mean, even in the most serious of situations, there's, people will turn to, laughter to try and pull themselves out of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how many times do you tell? I mean, I can tell a sad story and I'll start laughing because it's sort of you just can't take the worst sometimes, and you have to break it up just for yourself, just to
I
think
Wes edited the movie rather well, actually. I think he put the relief in all the right places.
I mean, I think it certainly is what makes the movie. I mean, I think without the ebbs and flows and without the character choice, like how were the characters the way they were? Did you all have time to improvise during scenes, or?
Yeah, the final product was a wonderful blend of what Wes had written and the stuff that we were improvising, because the fun part about making Last House was that Freddie, David, Jeremy, and I, we just clicked. We just became like best friends.
Tell. Yeah.
We there's this thing in acting that's an intangible concept. You understand what the words are, but the ability to produce what the words mean is there's a certain intangibility to it, and that's called interacting with people to give the impression that you had a past, because people who know each other for a long time have a repartee between themselves that goes beyond just what words in dialogue that are written indicate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, the four of us were able to, we all met, I think maybe a month before the film, and we spent some time together. We hung out. So being around each other became not abnormal. It became like, okay, we became comfortable with each other. And we talked about how we would do certain things and, where we thought the meat was in the relationships, in the physical part of the relationships, right? Because the blocking supports the dialogue, and the blocking work, to support each other. They're together. So like with Hess and me, the father-son dynamic, David and I spent a lot of time getting to know each other before, like really a lot of time just hanging out with each other. So, that's the thing. You get lucky with chemistry, which is an intangible concept, and you have a chance of having something. So, it's all part of it. And it was Wes and Sean. It was, Sean's producing, keeping his focus on everything, and Wes's, natural story ability.
Well, you would think by watching the movie that your character is controlled by your diction. However, what I took from it, the last scene you're in, it
wasn't heroin for me to do that,
which is the most intense part of the movie, and it's the most gut-wrenching part of the movie, because it's at that moment, to me, that shows that he wasn't just taking advantage of these girls or whatever, but that he didn't just have control over them in a physical manner, but mentally, the control had nothing to do with the drugs. He had control over you, over your character. Drugs or no drugs, it didn't really matter.
I just had this. It's funny you bring this up. I just had this discussion with somebody yesterday, and who said to me, your character was very sympathetic. it was controlled by the heroine. I said, no, my character wasn't controlled by heroine.
Mm-mm.
No, my character was controlled by Krug. Krug controlled the heroine and me.
Yeah.
Okay. I said, if I was controlled by heroine, then Krug would not be the most powerful force in the film. He'd be competing with the heroine.
Right.
But if he controlled me and the heroine, it didn't matter. And my friend went, "Oh yeah, I guess you're right."
Yeah, I always looked at it like I always looked at it like your character out of all them was the sweetest and most sympathetic. So maybe the heroine was a way for him to break down your, to like keep you to keep those emotions in control.
Just
one of his tools. One of his tools.
Yes. Yeah.
You are the nicest of the villains, but it is your fault that the girls are in the position that they're in.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a story. So, the scene outside where I pick the girls up, right? And they say to me, "You have any pot?" And I say, "Yeah, whatever." Go back and forth. And they say, "Is it any good?" And I say, "It's Colombian."
Yeah.
Right. So, my wife is a Colombian woman, and 20 years ago when we went on our first date, and to her surprise, when I took her home, I just, kissed her. She was kind of shocked, and she stepped back and she looked and she said to me, "Well, was it any good?" And I said, "It's Colombian."
It's Colombian.
Look on her face. Right? She had no idea what that meant. And then after she saw the movie, she punched me, and she was really screaming.
How sweet, though. You put a reference to y'all's relationship.
Okay. I was my first kiss with the woman who I was going to ultimately marry, right? And this woman who's the most important part of my life, and my children who are grown, not her mother, not their mother, but this wonderful woman. And I just couldn't help myself. I just, who's the shit comedian that I am? I just had to say the fucking joke.
That's true love right there.
Can't resist, yeah. So along with Last House, I can't not bring this up, but you wrote for many sitcoms, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, and that was my heyday of watching sitcoms. So we have things like Charles in Charge, which I watch a lot. Who's the Boss? You did a couple episodes of Who's the Boss, and then the short-lived TV show Harry and the Hendersons, which was
not short-lived. They did 76 episodes.
So I guess it was syndicated, right? So in my head, because I don't think it had a home. I remember watching it on weekends or weird times.
Fox Broadcasting, I think, had it, or Fox syndicated O&Os or something. Mm-hmm. I only worked. Yeah. Sam and I only worked the first season.
Okay. What is the challenge of being an actor from Last House and then going? Of course, you're a stand-up. I mean, you're a funny guy. So going to sitcoms, it's not that big a deal. But what is it?
The anomaly. Being junior in Last House. If you look at my career. Last House is the most important singular thing as an actor I've done, but as far as a career thing, it's the anomaly. Everything else has been comedy for the most part.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. I did want to bring up something else you have recently done. I believe it's called the Once and Future Smash.
Once and Future.
What is this? I just found out about this.
Okay. I'm glad you guys are bringing this up because I can't say enough good things about this film. I have a friend in Boston who has a podcast by the name of Neil Jones. Okay, and we've been friends for a few years, and we've met in person at some horror film conventions and kept in touch. And I did a PSA for him during the 2020 election. About voting, and we stay in touch with each other. So Right as COVID, like in the January after like the vaccines were out, right? Mm-hmm. I had my first vaccine or something. I got a call from the Facebook thing from Neil saying, "Listen, I'm producing a movie that we've been making, started before COVID, and we're getting close to finishing, and I would love for you to go to the producer and director's place and sit for an interview and just, roll along with it. They'll explain everything to you." And, Neil's a good guy. I like him. And it sounded like an adventure. So I figured, well, what the fuck, right? It wasn't far from my place in LA. We were at the apartment in Los Angeles. So it wasn't far away. So we go there, and I meet Michael Epstein and his wife, Sophia Cacciola, who are the writers and directors of this Once and Future smash. So they explain it to me, and here's what it is. In the mythological world, not the real world, at the time Last House and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and other classic horror movies were coming out, there was a film called Smash Mouth, and it was a genre called football revenge movies. Right? It's like stupid, right? And there were two guys back then who played the part of Smash, this physically deformed cannibalistic football monster. Okay, and these two guys now, 50 years later, they made the sequel, and like 30 minutes of it were lost, and they only have 60 minutes, 2 reels, and they're going to make a remake. This is the premise of this false documentary, like a fake mockumentary, right?
Oh, I love those.
Right. So what the entire program is, 80 minutes of a documentary, and then another 60 minutes of the quote original film, which was not an original film. It was brand new. They just shot it processed, right? And then the documentary. In the documentary, I appear along with a half a dozen other well-known horror film people who, during our interviews, ad-libbed answers to questions and comments about this mythological movie, this movie that doesn't really exist, but we wanted it to in this mythology. We're the ones who give it its credibility as a true entity, right? There are people from Halloween. There are people who directed Friday the 13th. I mean, it's real people. These are real.
Mark Patton, who's a kind of a friend of ours, Lloyd Kaufman. Yeah, all these people play themselves.
Yeah, and I love Michael and Neil and Sophia. And if you guys go online at your leisure and search the Once and Future Smash reviews, every one of them is stellar, and every one of them makes the same comparison that intrigued me. I didn't tell you what it was, but because it would have ruined this. But when I first heard what they're trying to do, I thought to myself, if it works, this will be to horror films and horror film conventions what Spinal Tap was, rock and roll concerts, right? And nearly every review makes the Spinal Tap comparison, and that's why I'm so thrilled and just fucking proud to have been a part of this. I went to the LA premiere a few weeks ago at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood. And I watched it. I took my youngest son, who's 33, and he turned to me at some point and he said, even if you weren't in this, I would be enjoying it. And he's a really hip, he's a rock star chef, and he's a very hip guy in LA and millennial. So he's like, not a showbiz audience, not somebody who's easy. And It was a packed house, and not all a papered house. I mean, there were people, lots of people who bought tickets. And I just thought to myself, this is pretty fucking fun. This is a lot of fun. This is going to be okay. So now they're on the festival circuit. They're at Corpus Christi, and then they're in New York next week. And last time I talked to Michael, they've already turned down a couple of distribution deals because they just didn't like them. And so I believe they are onto something here. So when it comes out, I would urge you guys to give it a look. It's terrific. It's fun.
Nice.
Oh, it looks great. And the Michael you talk about is Michael St. Michael's, who's Greasy Strangler fame.
The other is Bill Whedon is the actor who's a terrific guy I became friends with, and Michael Rappaport, who's Michael St. Michael. And became friends with them when we were at and they're just wonderful guys. That's the whole, I didn't know it wasn't like a regular shoot where you actually spend time with people. So I didn't know a lot of people on the show until the night of the opening, and everybody kind of met, and everybody was like really nice. And I thought to myself, I'm so happy for them, because this is going to be very good for their careers, and they're wonderful people. I'm very proud of this project, to have been just a tiny piece of this project.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, I can't wait to see it. It sounds very interesting, which, and nowadays it's good for people to have interesting things and not just, remakes of something or the same old cookie cutter superhero stuff like that. So it's nice that people are putting original ideas out there.
I hate fucking remakes. I do.
Well, I was going to ask about the Last House remake, but I chose not to. But if you have any thoughts, you could share.
You know what it is? I have a kind of a threshold, right? And I say to myself with remakes, if the first film had never been made, would this film stand on its own legs?
Mm.
Okay, could they call it something else? And would it be independent of the first film? Would it matter? Mostly the remakes that I've seen or don't really do that.
Mm-mm.
They don't. Yeah. And the reason is, it's the elements that make a film a hit are unbelievably intangible. It's the right director, it's the right actors, it's the right script, it's the right producer. It's so many variables that any one of them can tank every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, the original Last House, its rawness. You said, one of you guys said it was weird. It was like a documentary. Sometimes it was, this and that. Because we didn't know what we didn't know, right? So we did whatever we wanted.
He
didn't know you couldn't whatever you could. Oh no, you can't do that. Well, who cares? We did it, right? We fucking did it. Didn't matter, right? It just didn't matter. There isn't one night shot in that movie. It's all in the fucking daytime.
Yeah.
Okay, not one night shot, right? Nobody knows that until I say it, and they go, "Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's all daytime, right?"
I've only seen it one time, and it was like when it first come out, so I remember very little about it. Because like you said, like the first one is so much more powerful, due to the things we've talked about, that this one just kind of doesn't hit any of those chords. So
here's the thing: a movie like Last House on the Left is so raw and so kind of base emotional, right? That if you trick it up, you dilute that, and I didn't see the second one for a long time, the new Last House on the Left, for a long time. And then somebody I know in Scotland, I think, or England, said to me, England, I think, said to me, we're doing at a symposium a comparison of the two Last House on the Lefts. We have one writer writing in support of the second one. Would you like to take a position? And I said, well, I haven't really seen it, but I'll go take a look. And it's called Cine Excess, and it's first edition. You can find it. Something about the senses, something exploiting the senses. And my rebuttal to a woman who, I didn't know she was like, this was her part of her PhD dissertation, but I rebutted it completely. And I said, look, you're under the premise that this film deserves to exist. If Last House won, didn't, who would care? This is just the title. And I said it was overproduced. And I went into the thing and I said, that's a very raw story. When you trick it up and you overproduce it, you put Vaseline on the lens between the audience and the visceral horror of the film. And that was the one thing. Last House, that was Wes Craven who said, I want everything up close and personal. I want all the violence downstage center. I want it right in their faces. That was Wes Craven. He was tired of watching newsreels of Vietnam and other skirmishes and wars and having everything be so cinematic, but not really the horror of it. And he said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to throw it in their faces.
I always describe the remake. It to me, it always felt like a glorified Lifetime movie.
Yeah.
We did. Go ahead, Mark.
No, that's it. I was just
just agreeing. We did Hills Have Eyes versus Hills Have Eyes remake, and I think the remake, it stands on its own as a good movie. I mean, I enjoy the original one better, but I think that was a good, some comparison.
Do that. Last House, I don't believe it passes that. The second one, I don't believe passes that test.
No.
And nothing to the talent is good talent. I thought at times the director, who I do not know and could be a wonderful human being, but I thought at times he was more interested in a shot than telling the story. And this was a simple story that didn't need to be overshot, right? And the simpler you shoot it, like Wes, because we didn't have the money or he didn't have the experience, it wouldn't have mattered. Wes shot this movie as simply as possible.
And I think that works really good with it, because like you're saying in the remake, they give the girl, the victim, more of the backstory. She was like a high school swimmer and she escapes them and survives. And that's one thing I didn't really care for in the remake was her survival, because the impact of the daughter's death in the original, it hits you harder as a viewer, and it puts more at stake for the parents to really get that revenge that they ultimately get.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing about the original was it was pretty simple. It wasn't all that complicated, and that's what helped it. And Wes's thing about the documentary, that's not an accident. It's like none of the actors were well known, right? Nobody knew who we were. If they did, it would have been, there's what's his name in the part of, and this person in the part of. Well, that wasn't the case here. We were so unknown that nobody knew whether we were real or not real. So that added to the patina of the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, it's a fascinating movie, and I mean, this has been a fascinating time to spend with you, Mark. We really, really thank you for taking time out of your schedule and allowing your wife to pack in the other room.
No schedule. I could stop and write no schedule and hold it up. The great thing about my life right now, I don't have unless I have a doctor's appointment or I don't go anywhere. I got to be anywhere on time.
That is nice.
Stand-up show I do, I'm getting ready I have one in January, so I'm getting ready for it now.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time anyway, and it's just fascinating movie, and it's just your character is the most memorable of the movie, I think. I always thought that, just because when my friend Steven is the one that introduced me to you, and when he said Junior, I was like, yeah, I mean, I knew the character right off the bat.
Thank you so much for saying that. That's nice of you.
Jeff, Matt, you got anything else to add for Mr. Mark?
I mean, you're just, you're part of this legendary moment in cinema, and it's going to live forever, So you should be, you're obviously proud of it, and you should be proud of it.
Better not to die in obscurity. Right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. Have a wonderful holiday season.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you too. And everybody else, thank you for watching. We are Night of the Nerdy Laser. You can find us right here on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Facebook, Night of the Nerdy Laser, and Instagram at Night of the Nerdy Laser. And until next time, what should they do, Jeff?
Keep it bloody.
Because somebody has to.
See you next time, guys.